It started like any other day in the quiet town of Brookside Hollow until a wild bobcat kitten appeared on the curb, looking straight into an old man's eyes as if asking for help. While the whole town saw a curious little visitor, Walter Harris saw something no one else did, a silent plea behind those golden eyes. What he uncovered next would lead him into a hidden world of survival sacrifice and the kind of bravery you'd never expect from a creature so small. This isn't just a story about animals. It's about what happens when someone finally decides to follow their heart. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. If you enjoy the story, please like and follow. It helps us keep creating more. Your feedback means everything. Thank you. In the quiet town of Brookside Hollow, the smallest arrival disrupted the biggest silence. Walter Harris had lived on Brookside Trail for over 4 decades. A retired carpenter, widowed with a routine as polished and time-worn as the oak cane he carried. He wasn't lonely, he often told himself, just quiet. Every morning he drank his coffee on the porch, crossword in hand, and every afternoon, like clockwork, he walked the trail behind the house, his wife once filled with humming and herbal tea. It was on one of these walks in late September, when the trees were just beginning to tip their leaves toward gold, that Walter noticed something strange by the curb near Maple Lane. A flicker of motion, soft and subtle. Not the jerky scurry of a squirrel, nor the twitch of a chipmunk. This movement had intention. He stopped, squinted. There, sitting neatly at the edge of the sidewalk, was a kitten. But not a house cat. Its coat was a brushed pattern of bronze and ash, with paws too big for its frame, and eyes too wild to be domesticated, and its ears black-tufted, unmistakably bobcat. Walter's breath caught. He expected it to dart, to vanish like the adult bobcats he'd seen only once or twice, slinking into dusk like shadows with muscle. Instead, it chirped, a small bird-like sound, part greeting, part question. Walter blinked. The bobcat took a cautious step forward, then another. It stopped 10 feet away and sat, watching. They held a gaze across the soft autumn light, man and animal both still. For reasons he couldn't explain, Walter felt no fear, just wonder, and something else, a stirring, like someone had nudged the still surface of his heart. After a while, the kitten turned tail, flicking, and trotted away, disappearing under Mrs. Keller's manicured hedge. He walked the rest of the loop in a daze, his mind returning to that sound, those eyes. The next day, it happened again. This time, the kitten was batting a maple leaf in the breeze. Again it chirped. Again it watched him, alert, yet unafraid. Walter found himself smiling. "You're not lost, are you?" he murmured. "You've got purpose." The neighborhood soon took notice. Children on scooters whispered excitedly, "There he is." A little girl named Ellie dubbed him Toby, after a character in a picture book. The name stuck. People left bowls of water, even pieces of chicken or cheese. Photos of the wild cat of Brookside made it onto the town's Facebook group. "So friendly," someone wrote. Maybe he escaped from a sanctuary, others guessed. But Walter watched differently. While others saw a curiosity, he saw a question that hadn't been answered. Toby's coat, once glossy, dulled. He was thinning. And he never stayed long. Always scanning, always moving. Always going somewhere. One afternoon, Walter tested a hunch. He placed a small piece of roasted chicken on the curb and sat quietly on his porch. Toby emerged, sniffed, and ate half. Then, carrying the rest in his small jaws, he trotted away. But not toward the woods, toward the opposite direction. Walter sat forward. His heart skipped. Where was he going? The puzzle now had teeth. Some secrets hide in plain sight. Others crouch in silence, waiting to be seen. The next morning, Walter Harris was ready. He had packed a small canvas satchel, flashlight, gloves, water, and a container of shredded plain chicken he had boiled himself. The air had that early October chill that hinted at the coming cold, and the leaves made a soft crunch beneath his worn boots as he stepped outside. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. He didn't need to. By noon, Toby had appeared. The little bobcat crept from behind the picket fence across the street, nose twitching. Walter placed the chicken on the grass beside the curb, then retreated behind his porch railing, barely breathing. Toby ate quickly, as if time mattered more than hunger. Then, like the day before, he took what remained in his mouth and trotted off, not toward the trees, but in the opposite direction down the side street past the mailboxes. This time, Walter followed. He kept a respectful distance, using cars and maple trunks as cover. His knees complained, but adrenaline carried him. He hadn't felt this alert in years. Toby moved with purpose, small, fast, darting across a drainage ditch into a neglected parcel of municipal land filled with weeds, brambles, and litter. Walter hesitated before pushing through. The ground was uneven, the thorns catching his coat, but he pressed forward. At the far end of the lot, mostly hidden behind a curtain of tangled Virginia creeper, lay an old concrete storm drain. A rusted iron grate barred its entrance, though on one side, erosion had created a narrow hollow. Toby slipped through it, like water. Walter waited several minutes, then knelt beside the grate. He winced as one knee hit a rock, but steadied himself. He clicked on his flashlight and peered through the bars. The beam cut through damp air, revealing shadows and debris, a plastic bottle, a soda can, then something else. In the far back, about 15 feet in, was a nest of dried grass and crumpled leaves, and in it lay a larger bobcat. Walter's breath caught. The mother. She was barely more than bones wrapped in fur, mud-caked ribs, sharp beneath her skin. One hind leg was grotesquely twisted, swollen dark with infection. Her eyes, golden and heavy-lidded, reflected the light back with a quiet, resigned glow. And nestled against her side, nearly invisible in the gloom, were two tiny kittens. Newborns. Walter could feel his pulse in his ears. His throat tightened. Just then, Toby reappeared in the light. He padded forward and dropped the chicken by his mother's face. Then gently he rubbed his head against hers, chirping softly. The pieces clicked. The truth sank in. Toby wasn't just a curious kitten playing in the suburbs. He was the provider, the scout, the only hope his broken family had. Walter felt tears sting his eyes, not of fear or pity, but of awe, of understanding. He thought of Eleanor, of the nights she had held him when he couldn't sleep after her diagnosis, of the quiet ways she had saved him. Toby was doing the same, only younger, wilder, and braver. Walter slowly backed away, careful not to disturb the vines. He pulled out his phone and searched the contact he had saved weeks ago from a brochure he once found at the farmer's market, Silver Pines Wildlife Center. The line picked up on the second ring. "This is Dr. Lena Morrissey." Walter steadied his voice. "My name is Walter Harris. I think I've found a bobcat family in serious trouble. The mother's badly hurt. And there are babies." There was a pause, then calm confidence. "You did the right thing calling us Mr. Harris. Can you guide us in without getting too close?" "Yes," Walter said. "I'm not going anywhere. When help arrives quietly, it often changes everything." Walter didn't move from the clearing. He stood near the edge of the overgrown lot, watching the vines sway gently over the storm drain. The wind had picked up slightly, rustling through the dry brush, but all he could hear was the faint echo of his own heartbeat. Somewhere beneath that earth, a mother was dying, and 3 tiny lives hung in balance. 27 minutes later, a white van pulled silently onto the service road behind the trees. The side read, Silver Pines Wildlife Center in green lettering. Out stepped a woman in her 40s, her expression alert but calm, wearing a field jacket and boots. Behind her came a younger man, tall, broad-shouldered, carrying a case and wearing work gloves. Walter walked out to meet them. "Dr. Morrissey?" he asked. The woman nodded. "You must be Mr. Harris. I'm Lena. This is Ben." Walter pointed toward the hidden drain. "She's in there. The entrance is through that hollow on the right. It's tight, but the boy, the older kitten, goes in and out." Dr. Morrissey crouched low, studied the grate, then shined a compact tactical flashlight into the darkness. She didn't speak for a long moment. "She's alert, not moving." "I see the kits, too," she finally said. Her voice was steady but softer now. Ben was already unpacking. "We'll sedate the mother first," Lena explained. "She won't survive transport if she panics, and we don't want the little ones exposed to more trauma. It's a delicate shot." She prepared a long jab stick, a syringe at the end of a thin pole. Walter watched as she lay flat on the cold ground, positioning the stick slowly through the hollow. There was a low, guttural growl from within. "I've got her," Lena whispered. Then silence. After a beat, "She's under." Ben pried up the edge of the rusted grate with a crowbar just enough to create an opening. The metal groaned, then gave way. Walter stepped back as Lena and Ben moved with quiet efficiency. She slid into position and gently looped a padded catchpole around the mother's shoulders. Together, they guided her limp body out from the darkness. She was worse up close. Walter had seen dying animals before he had grown up on a farm, but this was different. There was still breath in her, still strength even in sleep. Lena murmured, "Compound fracture, severe infection. But she's alive." They placed her in a ventilated carrier lined with fleece and warming pads. Next came the kittens. Ben, smaller framed, lowered himself into the drain and emerged moments later with 2 squirming half-blind kits, each no bigger than a squirrel. Lena wrapped them carefully in blankets, holding them close to her chest. "That's 3, she said. Walter looked toward the trees. "No," he said quietly. "There's one more. The one who led me here. Toby." Lena followed his gaze. "He'll be cautious," she said, "but he wants to be with them." She returned to the van, pulled out a small humane trap, and baited it with the last of Walter's chicken. She placed it gently at the clearing's edge. "We'll wait," she said. They stood silently. The sun was beginning to dip behind the trees, casting long shadows over the clearing. An hour passed. Then movement. A flicker in the underbrush. Toby emerged slowly, eyes wide, body low. He sniffed the air, paused. Then, drawn by the smell and something deeper, he crept into the trap. The door clicked shut. No panic, no fight. He simply curled up, resting his chin on his front paws, chest rising and falling with a kind of quiet surrender. Walter knelt beside the trap. "You did good, little one," he whispered. "Not all healing happens in silence. Some happens in the company of someone who simply stays." 2 days later, Walter dialed the number on Dr. Morrissey's card with shaking fingers. He hadn't slept much. He'd gone back to his porch routine, but the crossword felt empty and the coffee cold. The call connected. "Silver Pines Wildlife Center. This is Dr. Morrissey. It's Walter Harris," he said. "Breath-catching. I just wanted to know." Her voice softened. "Walter, I was hoping you'd call." He didn't interrupt. "We had to amputate the mother's leg," she said gently. "The infection had gone too far. But she's a fighter. She's stable eating and beginning to move around." Walter exhaled slow and long. He hadn't realized he'd been holding his breath for 2 days. And the kittens? They're small. The newborns are bottle-fed, and they're responding well. No guarantees yet, but they're stronger than they look." And Toby Lena chuckled. "Toby is extraordinary." He didn't hesitate. The moment we placed him near his mother's recovery pen, he chirped and rubbed against her. She licked his face, even groggy from meds. He hasn't left her side since. Walter turned away from the window. His eyes had welled up again. "You saved them," Lena said. "But you didn't just report something, you stayed. Most people wouldn't." "I couldn't walk away," Walter whispered. In the weeks that followed, Walter became a regular at Silver Pines. He never asked for special access, but Dr. Morrissey always waved him in with a quiet smile. He'd bring fleece blankets, homemade boiled chicken, or just sit on a bench across from the Bobcat's enclosure with a thermos in hand. He watched Sky, the name the team had given the mother, learn to move on 3 legs, not awkwardly, but with strength, with pride. He watched the 2 tiny kittens named Finn and Clover grow curious and bold, tumbling over each other in mock battles. And he watched Toby slowly become a kitten again. No longer hunched with purpose, he pounced, rolled, ambushed his siblings from under blankets. But even in play, he often returned to his mother, brushing her cheek, sitting quietly by her side. There were moments when Walter would catch Sky watching him, just a flicker of her gold eyes, steady and unreadable. And somehow he knew. She remembered. She understood. One chilly morning in March, as the frost still kissed the edges of the sanctuary fence, Walter arrived to find Lena waiting near the gate. "They're ready," she said simply. He didn't need to ask what she meant. The next day they drove together into the heart of Glacier View Provincial Park, where the valleys ran untouched and the trees whispered their old secrets. At the release site, Lena and her team opened the carriers. Finn and Clover bolted into the underbrush, free and wild and fearless. Sky stepped out more slowly. She paused at the edge of the crate, sniffed the air. Then, with her 3-legged stride, vanished into the trees. Toby hesitated. He turned. His eyes met Walter's. And in that quiet glance, man and creature shared a goodbye that needed no words. Then he turned and ran after his family into the forest that had once seemed so far away. Walter stood alone for a long moment, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel empty. Sometimes healing doesn't come with noise. It comes with knowing you were part of something that mattered. Spring settled into Brookside Hollow with gentle grace. The crocuses bloomed early that year, dotting the sidewalks in lavender and white. Birds returned to the trees along Brookside Trail, and the town slowly exhaled from winter's long grip. Walter Harris resumed his daily walks, but something had changed, not in the path, not in the pace, but in him. Every time he reached the bend where Toby first appeared, he stopped. He would rest his hand gently on the top of the fence post and look toward the woods. There was nothing there, of course, only sunlight filtering through trees. But in his mind, he could still see tufted ears, a short flicking tail, and those amber eyes filled with purpose. He didn't expect them to return. That was never the point. One afternoon, while sweeping the porch, Walter noticed a padded envelope in his mailbox. Inside was a photograph. Sky lay curled beneath a cedar log, her eyes closed in calm. Finn and Clover wrestled nearby, their coats thick and wild, and nestled between them, head-raised ears, alert Toby. Written on the back in Dr. Morrissey's neat handwriting, "They're thriving, and still together." Lena Walter framed it and placed it on the mantel, right beside the photo of his Eleanor. The 2 images didn't clash. They belonged together, 2 lives he had loved in different ways, each of them teachers in silence. In the following months, Walter began volunteering at Silver Pines. Not every day, not even every week, but when they needed blankets, tools repaired, or someone to sit quietly with a frightened animal. They called him. He never asked for attention. He didn't need to. People in Brookside began to talk again, not about a bobcat on the street, but about the man who had followed him, who had made the call, who had stayed. One summer evening, the town invited Walter to speak at the library's community night. He was hesitant. Public speaking had never been his strength, but he said yes. He stood at the front, hands folded over the head of his cane. "I didn't rescue anything," he said plainly. "I just followed a question no one else was asking." He paused. Sometimes help looks like food and cages and medicine, but sometimes it's just noticing. Noticing when something wild is out of place, and choosing not to ignore it. There was silence in the room, the good kind, the kind that settles like soft earth over something newly planted. Walter never saw Toby again, not truly, but once late in the fall as the sky turned copper and shadows stretched long across the trail, he thought he caught movement at the edge of the woods. Just a flash. He didn't chase it. He only smiled and kept walking, because some stories don't need an ending, just a beginning that mattered.